Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to Synchronicity Web TV. I am your host, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. Well, I'm so excited to celebrate with you today, once again, Katherine O'Connell. Now, Katherine is someone you've seen on my channel before. She brings this incredible depth and nuance and joy and love to her interpretation of the sky. She's taught at Synchronicity University before, and now Katherine is back at Synchronicity University as part of the January 2025 speaker series. As this interview is publishing, you've got a little time left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class to learn from Katherine and these other incredible astrologers. We're going to have a wonderful conversation. I know it. Katherine, welcome. Thank you for being here once again.
Oh, thank you for asking me.
And so I'm so excited to spend time with you again. I love the love that you bring to your understanding of the sky. And that's something I share with you. But I know that your talk more specifically is going to be about Saturn. So let's just jump in, because your talk is called Rewilding Saturn. How is Saturn wild, Katherine? How? Tell me, please. I have Saturn in my first house. I'm an Aquarius sun. I want that Saturn to be a little wild, please. How do I go about it?
Okay. We all need that, right? We all need that. And as you probably remember, I was originally calling this talk Becoming Saturn, which felt right too, because, well, I'm sort of in my 70s now. So I've had, a couple of Saturn returns, and I'm going through my third opposition, right? So kind of feels like we're maturing into Saturn in some ways. So that felt right. But as I got more involved in it and talked more about it and reflected more on it, I realized that wilding Saturn might be better. One of the things that struck me is I like to go back to the beginning, really back to the beginning in history. And you probably heard the saying, a lot of us have, the victor writes the history, something like that. You know what I mean? And it hasn't been a very nice thing in a lot of respects. If I think a lot of people know what I mean who are listening to this. And I thought, well, what about Saturn? Who's written Saturn's history? Because that really affects how we perceive something, what we've read or heard about it, and what people choose to emphasize. So I went back to Mesopotamia. I went back before Greece, before Rome, before Egypt. And boy, did I have a fun time. I love researching ancient history anyway, always have, ever since I was a kid. I thought, oh my gosh, this is a different Saturn. We go way, way, way back, and we go back to the when the creator goddess was Tiamat. And I have a beautiful ode to her. I'm going to read a beautiful poem and a hymn to Tiamat. Talking about oldie but goodie, right? And Saturn was her first and favorite offspring. Interesting. At that time, Saturn was called Ninurta. So we're back into Akkadian history, lots of fun stuff. And as I was doing this research, I noticed not long ago in the news, you might have seen this, very recently, within the last 4 months, they have researched for the first time some of the Akkadian cuneiform tablets. Do you know how they did it? AI.
That makes sense, right? These technologies, they got to be good for something. Everybody's afraid of them. But if we can use these technologies in these ways, how wonderful. Yeah.
Great Aquarian attitude. See, I knew you'd love that, right? Right? And they had to do it because there wasn't someone who spoke it well enough or could read the cuneiform. So AI is teaching us. So what a time to research Saturn. What a time to bring back the Mesopotamian deities. And, all those deities love us to say hello and say, hey, and be communicative, right? And they respond well to it, as you know, and I know. So I thought, it's beautiful history. I don't want to give it all away right now, but you've got to hear some beautiful history, some beautiful hymns that really give a different idea. What is Saturn? What kind of an energy are we talking about? Saturn was the good guy. You know who his nemesis was? Marduk, who's Jupiter.
Wow. Okay.
Like, have you ever seen Home Alone? The kid goes, it's kind of like that. Yeah, there's some real surprises here and really kind of almost reversals, right? And of course, like we said, the victor writes history. So you have these situations where, everything changed. There was something called the Tablet of Destinies. And if that doesn't sound like, a wonderful movie or, like a Raiders of the Lost Ark, I love it, right? The Tablet of Destinies. And it had all the universal principles, how to live. Some people think probably the Ten Commandments was a chunk of that, like a lot of things that come from ancient times, which of course disappeared, but I suspect it will show up, right? But there was a Tablet of Destinies that Tiamat and Ninurta were responsible for keeping safe. And one day, a bunch of gods led by Marduk came in and took the tablet, right? And so Ninurta was responsible for finding that tablet in order to keep, a metaphysical order and goodness going. So that's a very different idea that we get between, as far as the relationship between Saturn and Jupiter is concerned, right? So there's barely a Saturn to temple. There's barely a temple to Saturn as you go around the Middle East, but there's lots to Marduk, Jupiter. So that's kind of, and then the Egyptians came in and they kind of downgraded Saturn a little bit more. If this were an airline, Saturn started with his or her own fleet, right? And then the fleet got smaller, and then it got downgraded to economy class when there's not enough leg room. So I'd like to restore the history in order to restore our attitude, because it's so easy to have a negative attitude toward Saturn, right? As you know, in the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church changed Saturn to Satan, right?
Wow.
And Daimon, which is the good spirit that protects us, Daimon, in French, devil, right? To what? Demon.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of, but that's, so liberating the history, very helpful. So what about in magical work and astrological work when you're looking for the right gem or the right metal, right? We were taught to any. Do you associate any particular metal with Saturn?
Saturn, I would imagine steel. Am I right in that? Because I think,
lead.
Yeah,
Usually lead.
Lead. Oh,
Heavy.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Right? So traditional alchemical and magical work. But you know what? If Saturn has a very different nature than we've been taught, maybe there's other options. I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to hold this up. What I'm wearing right now, it's kind of small. This is pink sapphire, a very unusual gem.
Yes, I know a little something about pink sapphire between you and me and the people watching here.
Yeah.
So, like during the pandemic, I ended a 7-year relationship. And I remember about a year and a half into that relationship, he presented me with a ring. And the ring was pink and white sapphires. And it was modeled after the first ring that Ben Affleck gave Jennifer Lopez, except that was diamonds. This was sapphire. And I remember saying to him, look, I don't know if I ever want to get married, but if I ever do want to get married, it'll probably be to you, but I really want that ring. And oh boy, did I ever love that big 5-carat pink sapphire ring. I rocked that ring. You see it in so many videos going back. I love that ring set in white gold so much. So pink sapphires are very near and dear to my heart. So do pink sapphires have a certain magical quality to them?
Yes, they do. And if you think sapphire, what color do you usually think of?
You usually think blue, right?
Usually think blue, right? But there's a lot of people that don't really wear blue sapphire well. I'm one of them. And yet it's often associated with Saturn,
Yeah.
you know. And I love it. It's beautiful, but I don't wear it well. Well, I've never really liked pink that much until lately. I had a client that I was doing some business and financial forecasting for several years ago. Come in, and she was just very happy with some of the results of our work together. And she came, she said, "I want to give you something." I said, "You don't have to give me, and she had this tin about 6 inches round, beautiful, like handmade. And she said, "I want you to take one of the open and take any one you want." It was full of several hundred pink sapphires. She'd just come back from, I don't know, I think Indonesia. And I no, I can't, do it. I have I have a lot to learn about receiving things well, right? But I did, and I did what my grandmother, who's a Choctaw elder, taught me to do, which is to go for the thing that's closest to you, not to think and go in a whole other, but just grab, you feel the energy of the one that's closest for you, that's meant for you. So I didn't even look; I just felt the energy, and this is 4 carats, yeah. And like I said, I wasn't crazy about pink, and I wasn't ready for it. So I put it away. I didn't really think much about it until during the pandemic. There was a jeweler toward the end of the pandemic that came to visit, to work for a Christmas fair. And I knew him, and I knew he was a very good, and he is a very high principled person. So I thought, I want to show him this stone. I hadn't seen him in a few years. He worked in gold, and I knew that I had to have it set in gold. And he took a look and he said, "That's flawless, That's and he talked about it. He had worked with it. He knew some Vedic, and he talked about it. And because you don't see much in books about it. And he said, if there's something that really balances Saturn and combines it with Venus, it's the pink. So what a perfect stone for Aquarian who wanted to become friends with Saturn and yet also have a night kind of soften it a little bit, right? And
Yeah.
the best day for doing rituals with it, Friday night. Venus is night, right?
Yeah.
It's Saturday too, because it goes right into Saturday, And I do, as you know, a lot of dream work with honoring the planetary hours and gems. So doing that ritual on Friday night and going into Saturday, you have these wonderful results. You can really soften a lot of stuff. That you think, oh my gosh, this is a Saturn opposition. How can I kind of make friends and kind of, not have to have such a big lesson, maybe a little lesson. It's really helpful for that. I'm going
Incredible.
through, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going through my third Saturn opposition right now. Want me to show you a brief chart and tell you something
Yeah, let's have a look.
interesting? So this is something, you see that lovely grand trine there, huh? Yeah,
Yes, in fire. Yeah.
yeah. And look at that ascendant. It's 6
Mm.
degrees Aquarius. Now, my sun, as you know, I'm an early Aquarian. My sun is at 3 degrees, and my Venus at 11, and my Jupiter at 8. So,
Mm.
at any rate, on the busiest traveling day of the year, so the news people say, which is the day before Thanksgiving, right? I was in my little Honda car, going. I live about 6.5 miles from, San Francisco, any city, any big city, anything really. So I was on my way Wednesday, the busiest traveling day of the year, in my car. I, who have very, very good luck with traveling, very good luck. And I'm at a place in the Redwoods. I have to go through the Redwoods. I'm in the Redwoods and by the ocean, very rural, very beautiful. It's 11:32 in the morning on the busiest travel day of the year. And all of a sudden I hit black ice. So this is a couple of weeks ago, right? This is very recent. This is this year, right? I hit black ice. Never had it happen before. And I'm a very cautious driver. Like, I'm not one of those people that, would, get myself into trouble. Like, I got a perfect driving record, all that. I hit black ice. You really can't do much about it. If you're in it, you're in it, and you can't always see it. You can't see it. So, in my little car lifted off the road, spun around, and landed going the opposite direction on the other side of the highway.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. There was about a 6-minute period when no one else was on the road but me on the busiest travel day of the year. I was fortunate there was no guardrail. It was a rural part of 101 where there's no guardrail. So I didn't hit anything. I could feel the car plunk down, and I immediately started it up again. It started perfectly, and I went back over to my side and just drove. So lucky girl, right?
Yeah.
So we don't often have the time when these things happen, right? I did. It was 11:32 in the morning. So here's my sun is in the midpoint between Pluto at 0 degrees. My natal sun is here between that and the ascendant. At right at 6 degrees. The ascendant is exactly opposing Mars,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It's
So,
incredible.
and you know what I did during that period of time where I was spinning around and everything?
Mm.
I was saying the Tara mantra aloud. I was wearing this.
Wow. Yeah, trying to get that like to contain an otherwise wild event, right? And that's the
Wild, it's a
blessing.
wild event.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And
it
I'm in
was
the
quite.
middle of the deep redwoods at 11:30. It's still dark because there's that many trees. You know, you've
Mhm.
been to places like that are just that many trees that they're dark at noon. You know, and I was wearing this, which is a jade pinky ring, because the pinky, of course, is Mercury, and I was born with a retrograde Mercury in Capricorn, 6 retrogrades, and so I was wearing this. You know, and it was on a Wednesday, Mercury's day,
Mhm.
and I was wearing my gem of Saturn with the Venus to soften it. And I was saying aloud because I do Tara mantra so much that it's automatic. It's like muscle memory for me to say it aloud. The whole time I'm saying Om Tani Tu Tani Toni Soha.
Mm.
Being Tara, she's only got one job, it's to help humanity. But we have to use our free will and ask.
Now, most people don't realize this. I love that you mentioned Tara because actually, right here, if you can see, that's the white Tara, actually. Can you
It
see
is.
that? There it is. It's a little white Tara charm that you put up in your home. And I always keep that like sort of looking over my shoulder in the videos that I make when I'm home and making videos. So I love that you mentioned her.
Yeah, you and I haven't really talked about religion, but I'm also an interfaith minister and I've taught world religions and everything. And I'm fascinated, by and the cool thing about Buddhism is you don't have to join a religion to do Buddhist practices. It's a philosophy too. So you can do Tara or any of it without saying I'm a Buddhist. You can be anything. And that's pretty cool. You know how the Dalai Lama, when they ask him what his religion is, and he says, my religion is kindness, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, as you know, one of the beautiful things about astrology, particularly from Vedic and Tibetan astrology, that we have is remediation. We have things that can balance out something challenging in a chart. Sometimes it's called remediation. It's called different things, right? But this is a nice example of it, isn't it? You can kind of work with these energies and make friends with them instead of, oh, I'm so afraid of Saturn or Pluto, whatever. You know what I mean? It's, that kind of trauma reaction instead of the trauma reaction to ameliorate that, to balance, you know, and to kind of make friends with it. And boy, did that, I'm a lucky girl. I feel that was really helpful. So if there's anybody listening to this that would be helped by that, Aquarians and, well, of course, Capricorns, especially Aquarians, because Pluto's in Aquarius, I think are having an opportunity to get to know Pluto and Saturn, because of course Saturn and of course Uranus, because Saturn and Uranus, of course, are very important to Aquarians. They're our planets, right? So I've got a lot of predictions, several of which I'll make during the class. So you have to listen for that to the class. But to do with Saturn and things we're going to discover because Pluto is in Aquarius. So it's to do
Yeah.
with the relationship between Pluto and Saturn. I'm doing a whole other webinar I'm putting together now about Pluto.
Oh, wow. So you'll have to come back and teach that with us as well. But I know for this coming year, for 2025, we have Saturn dipping in and out of Aries. And then in 2026, we'll conjunct Neptune at 0 Aries. Can you give us some insight into what you think that might mean for the collective?
Yes, I think a lot of positive things. A lot of people go, oh,
Yeah.
however, let's, I've got a strong Jupiter too, positive outlook. Oh, one thing I think that, with that, well, of course I have an Aries moon, so you have to make friends with it, right? And with Mars and Aries, right? And so I think one thing, particularly on the positive side, is that wonderful tendency, for Aries to find the new way of doing it. Oh, let's find a new and different solution nobody's ever heard of. I love that. It's creative, it's energetic, it kind of, gets us up and moving and doing stuff and embodied, with that wonderful fire energy. Now, in a wonderful way it could combine with Saturn. We want what's new, but we don't just want it to be a pipe dream. Saturn makes us, okay, what's the structure? Aquarius, you've got some water to share with the world. Let's give you a container to put it in so you don't lose it all on the way.
Yeah.
And remember, I'm at the end of my third Saturn opposition, so Saturn's pretty important right now in my chart. So there's an example that there's a tense aspect, yet at the same time, there's things we can do that are productive and helpful with tension instead of having it take us over. We can work with the tension, right? There's a lot of things that involve tension. Sexual attraction involves tension, right? We don't want to do away with that.
Right.
So how do we work with tension? The tango has a lot of tension, but nobody wants to do it with the tango, right? A lot of things that are beautiful in the world have a lot of tension.
Yes. And with Saturn in particular, I love that you mentioned the container with Aquarius, because when you normally look at like depictions of Aquarius, like for example, in the star card, we see in tarot, Aquarius has the container of water, and the water represents wisdom. And we rarely see that water like actually on the human figure. Normally, we see that water being poured outwards towards others, towards humanity, towards a more external understanding. But I never conceptualized before that the container itself is so Saturnian. And it's wonderful to have wisdom, but it's like, where are you going to pour it? What are you going to do with it? That's what Saturn can help us with. And I can't help but think, Saturn moving into Aries. Aries is an energy that is like sort of the opposite of contained. Whatever we think contained is, that's usually not what we think Aries is. And so, how promising to think that the passion, the awareness of one's free will, of deciding the direction of your life and putting effort with commitment in that direction. How intriguing to think that if we put a container on it, what might we manifest? Instead of it just being the performance of freedom, the performance of force, but actually be directed in a way that's conscious, well, we just might tap into a deeper, more meaningful power that can help us to manifest a life that we feel that much better about.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think too that Saturn is going to have a lot to do with giving us some solutions to some of our not only our economic questions, but our sustainability and our relationship with the earth questions. Because that sickle that Saturn is carrying, that was and is in parts of the Middle East still made, and it can be used as either a tool of agriculture or it can be used as a knife. Pretty much the same design is made like today in parts of the Middle East.
Incredible.
It's a
Incredible.
beautiful, and you know what? Do you know what other stone is associated with Saturn? And you know what the sickle was made of? It was made of gold and lapis lazuli.
Wow, lapis lazuli. And lapis lazuli is another one of those stones that also has an association with Venus. So it's so interesting that you are making us aware of how Saturn and Venus go together. And I think it's because Saturn is associated with commitment and longevity And what is more a statement of love itself than commitment? We often think of them as intertwined. Now, it's interesting. You mentioned being in the redwoods. I could have sworn you were Canadian. I thought that you were, but no, you're out in California.
Well, I've got strong Canadian roots. I
Oh,
was born and raised in New England. My
okay.
father's mother was from Newfoundland, and I have
Ah,
relatives both on the native and the European side in the Maritimes and up in Upper New England and the Eastern Maritimes. And also, I lived on a native reserve, a very rural one, in very rural British Columbia for 3 years,
wow.
doing
Wow.
reconciliation work. Yeah,
Yeah. So look at us. We have that Canadian connection also.
yeah, I
I
love
love
Canada.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely love Canada. So the other thing, if you mind me emphasizing a different part of this?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So another part of it is that, as you know, I'm also a clinical psychologist, and so I'm very interested in growth and development. Taught it a lot at the college level, and I was, looking because I have quite a few charts over 60 years as an astrologer, right? And looking at the first, the second, the third, Saturn return. No one writes about the third Saturn return. You know who's going to go through his third Saturn return in about a year? Paul Simon. So I'm going to show his chart. That's going to be fun. And you know who else I'm going to talk about? Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, wow. I love Bruce Springsteen. Like, it's not even my kind of music, but him, I really like. I like what he embodies. I like his energy. I like what he represents. And, you just always felt this really nice energy from him,
Yeah,
always.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. It's funny because I write about him, and I talk about him in my dream presentation too, because he's such a dreamer.
Mhm.
He writes a lot from his dreams, like Paul McCartney. So a lot of people, well, Paul Simon too. So they're very much very active dreamers. By when I say active dreamers, I mean that they take the action based on what the dream tells them to do. Like I do, I live that way. It's different than just writing it down. So there's usually a theme I'm noticing, right? The first, the second, the third Saturn return, and the oppositions. There's a theme, and we begin to see it at about age 7. The first Saturn opposition.
For Saturn square is at 7, right? Yeah. The
I'm
first
sorry, the
Saturn
Saturn
square.
square, the first
Yeah.
opposition at 15.
Yeah.
So Bruce Springsteen is a great example because he had a very tough life at home. His dad was, he's written about it a lot publicly, a rageaholic, an alcoholic, violent. His mom kind of helped a lot, him get through all this. But at 7, they decided to send him to a Catholic school. At first, he didn't like the idea, but then he discovered they had a choir. He discovered singing in Latin and English. Latin is beautiful. I grew up with Latin too. I love Latin. But at any rate, so that got him through. So a very tough time with Saturn. Didn't make his childhood easy. Like you said, the first square, boy, did he have a big square. It was a toughie. But he had that to bring him through. The first opposition at 14, 15, his mom gave him a guitar. And he decided to stand in front of a long, full-length mirror, hold the guitar and play it. And when he looked at himself in the mirror, which is a great example of what an opposition is, right? Looking at ourselves in the mirror, plays guitar. He said it was the first time in his life that he felt okay being himself and in his own body.
That is our ultimate container, isn't it?
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
wasn't too long, after that he put the group together and they were successful. And by the time he got to his first Saturn return in his late 20s, he was very well known, not only as a singer, but as a songwriter. The Pointer Sisters, a lot of people had done his songs, and made them very well known before he was well known. So why did he go into such a deep depression? I'm not going to answer that. You have to listen to the to the talk,
Mhm.
right? So that had to do with Saturn, and I've got that chart. I love doing charts of the Saturn returns. and the oppositions, right? You can see that depression, what got him out of it, right? Well, then, if you're going to have a serious depression in the first Saturn return, what's going to happen in the second? It depends upon what you do and how much work you do on yourself. And there's a lot we can do, right? Any ideas about what happened in a second Saturn return?
His second Saturn return. No, what happened?
Right, 59, late 50s, right? Well, he had had a lot of psychotherapy. Well, first of all, he made a decision in his life. He was not going to get into alcohol because he watched what it did with his dad. He was not going to get heavily into drugs because he watched what that did to a lot of his friends. So he was going to have to do something else. So he got into psychotherapy and really worked on himself. He began to go into depression the second Saturn return, and he caught it in time. He started writing about his life and about mental health as a way of helping others. So if we start helping others in that second Saturn return and sharing what we did about our pain and pay it forward, then it can pull us out of having the same, kind of outcome as for the first, or the same level of intensity of struggles. Isn't that
incredible? Yeah, incredible to consider how Saturn can represent how we might use it to our advantage. And I think when we help others, we help ourselves so much. And it sounds like Bruce Springsteen is such a wonderful example of that. Already his music had been helping people. Of course it has, but to have that real visceral understanding of how your work and how your presence reaches people, it can be a different thing. And so I'll give you an example. For me right now, I'm approaching my Saturn trine. And so this happens, it's sort of like the culminating trine. So it's the trine before the return that's going to happen in a few years' time. And I recently started taking on new clients again and doing client work. And so there had been a few years there where I was just making a lot of content. Just today, I got a message from YouTube, your year in recap. And this year, just on YouTube, I published some 300 videos.
Wow.
And then you add to that the fact that I have a membership site, and there I publish, anywhere from 12 to 24 videos a month as well. And so I was just really focused on that. And then more recently, I started getting back more actively into teaching. And I really wanted to start working with clients again because I felt like I needed to see the people that I was actually reaching. Like I needed to have that experience of looking at someone's face, realizing there are real people out there who are being reached by my work and what my work means to them. And I'll tell you, it's brought like this new life into my own sense of purpose. My own sense of direction has felt like it's awakened in a way that I didn't realize I needed until the opportunity to actually be of service to another person in that sacred space of a consultation started to arise. And until talking to you just now, I hadn't made the connection with Saturn. And that's what it likely is about. That Saturn is showing me like what you actually do can be part of creating healthy containers. I think that's part of what you helped me to understand today, healthy containers that come about thanks to Saturn. And I'm so, so grateful for that. And so once again, everybody, Katherine is coming back to Synchronicity University as part of the January 2025 speaker series. And while this interview is publishing, you've got just a few days left to choose your tuition rate. As always, just $5 a class, an unheard of rate to learn from Katherine, this multi-book writer and brilliant mind and incredible spirit. I'm so, so grateful that you're back at Synchronicity University, Katherine. I'm really looking forward to your talk on Saturn, Rewilding Saturn. It's going to be so fun.
Thank you. Me too. What a delight. You are such a treasure. Thank you. I'm so glad you're seeing clients again.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I didn't know I needed it until I did it. And it's like, oh, wow. Okay. And we'll see, like, I'm always going to trust my journey to see where it takes me and how long I'll continue to do it. But it is the love I'll tell you, the love, the faces, the gratitude, the openness, the hearts that people bring to that moment of consultation. It's very powerful. And I'm so grateful for them, like to them. And I say that to them. And I don't know if people really appreciate how much it means to me that really the audience I have, the love that people give, whether it's online in comments, by viewing, but then to actually see a face, to see somebody like communicate with me, trust me, feel like they know me, with me sharing this part of me through my work. Wow, how rewarding, how meaningful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. I'm also one that does well with doing both and kind of needs to do both. I
Yeah.
think it makes my Chiron happy too.
Yeah, that's true too. What sign is your Chiron in?
It's in Sagittarius, right on my midheaven.
Ah, what degree?
It's at 18, and the midheaven is at 16.
Do you know that that is conjunct my Jupiter? No, wait,
That's
it's trine my Jupiter. Forgive me. It's trine my Jupiter.
oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, it is conjunct. It's conjunct my moon and Neptune, that
Oh, that's
Sagittarian
lovely.
placement.
That's
And
lovely.
it's trine my Jupiter in my 10th. So look at us
Wow,
working
it's
together and putting stuff out there
beautiful.
together. How
Wow.
wonderful.
Well,
Yeah.
the other thing I find with those of us who are natural healers is if we're not doing some one-on-one work, we can begin to get into soap opera, making our lives a bit of a soap opera. There's an emotional container that we get for our own emotions when we do clinical, one-on-one work that we don't have when we do just the big work.
Mhm. Yeah, there's got to be
Interesting
that
thing.
balance. Yeah,
The
yeah.
balance, the balance, and Shinto and Japanese Shinto, they say there's two kinds of energy, and one is linear and the other is horizontal. And
Mhm.
most people have one or the other. They either work this way, like one on one, or they work this way with groups. There's
Mm.
only a few people who have both, who can work with individuals and large groups, and they need to do both.
Wow.
Is that interesting?
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And
Yeah.
I see that in both of us. And I know I see myself in you. We have this wonderful connection. We're so much alike. And how wonderful to have this time with you and to continue to learn from you, Katherine. So, again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's an honor.
And thank you, everybody out there, for watching. Until we connect again, take care. Bye.
Namaste.